Hello, I'm Derek Smalls, and you're watching, or listening, or both, to Rock Shop Live with Eric Broadbent. He's the Bent Broad.
You're watching Rock Shop Live, brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Microphones for Rock Shop Live are provided by Rode Microphones. Now, for Music Gear Network, here's your host, guitarist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it is the weekend. Happy Friday to you all. Welcome to Rock Shop Live. We have a very special guest this evening, something I'm very, very excited about, very close to my heart as a guitar player. This is just a fantastic evening. We have gold, platinum, Grammy award-winning producer / engineer / all those good titles and probably many more that I'm totally forgetting about, Mr. John Cuniberti. John, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's hot, dry, and smoky. I'm in Northern California, and as you probably know, we're having our fire season.
Yes.
So in the background, I have my air purifier running, but it's warm, and if the power goes off, that's if my screen goes black, you'll know that the power company has shut off my power to prevent a forest fire. So that's what's going on here.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're not immediately in harm's way. And you and I were talking just a moment ago off the air. Maybe we'll start a little bit about this, just to kind of let people know the dangers that some of these people are facing there. And here in Canada, we don't experience that. We get the occasional odd tornado warnings, which is we normally don't get that, but we've been getting it a little bit more. The environment's changing a lot. But tell us a little bit about the story, how that last fire was potentially caused by electrical problems, and now what they're trying to do to prevent that.
Well, the infrastructure that the grid, so to speak, that provides power for all of Northern California, which is millions and millions of people, it's old. And coupled with the fact that we now have large populations of people moving into rural areas, into forested areas, primarily, that people generally used to not live, we have more and more electricity running through high fire danger areas than we used to. We had a terrible fire a couple of years ago around this time, and many people were killed. A lot of homes were destroyed, and it was caused by these electrical wires that were blowing around in the wind and causing fire. And so the company was sued by a lot of people.
A class action suit, right?
And yeah, some sort of class action lawsuit, and ended up in bankruptcy, so to speak. So now they're saying, well, we can't afford any more lawsuits because we're basically broke. So what we're going to do is, when it gets windy, we're just going to shut the power off.
Jeez.
And unfortunately, the grid is not laid out in a fashion where it can only be shut off in areas of high danger. It'll get shut off in huge swaths of area that aren't even particularly dangerous.
Yeah.
I live in the Oakland Hills. I can understand why they might want to shut my power off. But if you go a mile out of the hills and down into the flatlands, those people are not in danger of a forest fire, yet all their power goes off. And it's not just homes, it's businesses. Yeah. And it's billions of dollars when they shut it off. So we're all waiting now because it's getting windy and it's hot and it's dry. And, so the power, they give us a warning,
Yeah,
but
10 minutes or half an hour, whatever.
Yeah.
Not good.
So,
Not good.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in layman's terms, too, how people could appreciate this, it's not like going to your circuit breaker, wherever your breaker is in your house, and shutting off the kitchen or the stove. You're just, and now the city's gone. The city's out of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, when power is turned off in a city, it creates havoc. I mean, we're talking not just homes losing power, but we're talking about street lights.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about intersection lights. We're talking about everything.
Yeah.
And
subways
in a metropolitan area, that is very dangerous.
Yeah.
So no one's looking forward to it.
I know. Well, fingers crossed, because like I told you earlier off the air too, I've got some friends in that area as well too. And the last fire that came through, very, very close. And, a lot of people, this is one piece of advice I'll try to share, because I'm the type of person when, like a warning comes on our phones, okay, there's a tornado warning or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, it's going to be okay. I went outside. Everything looks okay. I shouldn't be that person, and a lot of other people shouldn't be that way. When you get a warning, it's better to get out.
Take it seriously.
Yeah, take it serious. Get out. If it's a false positive, well, that's great. Get back home and everything's good. But yeah, just watch the news, listen to radio, whatever the case may be, and just be aware. So, anyways, we'll wish the best for you. But before we jump into the questions, we'll go over and say hi to a bunch of our friends in the chat, and probably there'll be some questions for you throughout the evening as well too. Scott Connor's one of the first people jumping in here. Jim Dales, Matt Krillo's here. Carlo Santin from Canada here. Jim Dales says, looking forward to this since it got announced. Wish Joe Satriani got more acknowledgement, not even listed as an option for Guitarist of the Decade with Guitar World. 4 albums, Chickenfoot, G3. Yeah, a lot of times with these, it's popularity contests with these things.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you take out certain advertisements with magazines and they'll throw you up higher on the list. It is what it is. I mean, it matters on the street, that's where it counts, and the people that show up at the concerts, I think. But I agree with you, Jim. Mark Effects, good evening, everyone. Old Guy's Guitar Vlog. Dude, this is crazy. John is a legend. I know he is. He is. He's a legend.
In my mind, I don't know about yours.
And I got to tell you,
it's an old joke.
It's good, and I'll share a funny story throughout the end of the program. How humble this fellow is. We could all learn a lot from John. Scott Roos is here. Six String Brian is here. Antonello Pudva from over in Italy, I believe, says hi, Eric. Christopher Miles is tuning in from Toronto. Good friend of mine.
Hey, buonasera.
Awesome. And the chat just froze. I'm going to try to scroll down. I'm going to come backwards a little bit. Butterfly and Ladybug Show, that's my better half. She's going to be sharing a lot of your links throughout the evening for your website, which is very, very resourceful. And, of course, your YouTube channel, which we'll talk a lot about. Beautiful channel. And a lot of people could learn a lot about recording from that channel with the simplicity of one microphone. I mean, if if you can't get something good with one microphone, I mean, we'll talk more about that as well, too. Colin Cartmill is here. Brad Miller is here. Edwin Crane, Gary Tholander. And I apologize if I missed anybody. I may say your name twice. Brad Miller, I'm going to say it again just for safety. Let me see here. Ed B is here. Edwin Crane is here. Awesome. We have a full house. John Mulvey is here. Oh, you know John, of course. I'm sure you know John Mulvey, 3G Guitars. He works obviously very closely with Joe Satriani, a little bit good friend with Joe. If you don't know him, I'm sure you'll hear.
I don't think we've met.
Okay,
or maybe we have. You'll have to remind me.
It's possible. Talk to Joe. Joe will let you know about John. He's a great player, and he has this really, really cool neck pocket on his guitar that he builds under the 3G Guitar brand. And I think Joe has one. Continue on. Carl Santin, if you have time for a question, what is one thing John has learned from working with so many talented people? That's a great question right off the hop. Let's start with that.
Oh, wow. What have I learned? Wow.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't sound like it's a tough question, but it has, because each of these people, and there's been hundreds, I learned all sorts of things about how they approach their art. That's a kind of a real general description, but there is something there's probably something they all share, and that's the passion that they have for what it is they do. And I don't think any of them can imagine really doing anything else but what they do. Mm-hmm. So I think if there's one thing that I've learned from all of them is follow your passion. And, it may not turn out exactly the way you think you want it to, but you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. I think you know what I mean.
No, I do.
I think, your passion and your art will take care of you. You may not be you may not become the huge rock star. You may not sell boatloads of records. You may not be even famous in any way, but you'll have your art. And as artists, I think, your job is to create art. That's why you're here. You're here to create art. And like Andy Warhol said, if people don't like it, just make more.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So I think, I guess that's about as good as I can answer that question in a general sense. I mean, we could talk about each individual, but we'd be here for 3 days.
Oh,
so.
I know for sure. Well, we'll talk about a few of them tonight. We'll be talking about Paul Gilbert. We'll be talking about your friend Joe Satriani a little bit, and some others as well too. But here's something kind of interweaving what Carlo said there, and I have a really good question on deck from John Mulvey again too. This is something you'll love because it's mixing desk console related. But I mean, a lot of these players that come through your studio, you've worked with some of the best, and I'm just going to use a couple right off the top of my head with Joe Satriani and Paul Gilbert, two guitar players I admire greatly. And I mean, these guys come in there, they're on the top of their game. I mean, just amazing players. But I'm willing to bet, because it's a job of the producer to make them even better than what they are. Have you found from either, we'll just use Paul and Joe as an example, have you seen them walk out of the studio with a kind of thank you for, that, because I know you're not the type of producer where you're just going to like phone it in and say, okay, are you happy with that? We're good. I think you're the type of guy that's like, Paul, you're capable of more. Joe, you're capable of more. Do you find that the guys sometimes have walked away with a thank you for some of the things that you've done?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Paul and Joe. Both those guys are generous and humble and incredibly professional. And they have the ability to show appreciation. Mm-hmm. They don't bring their egos and their rock star prowess to a recording session.
Right.
That's for the stage. People pay to see that. Mm-hmm. It's useless in a recording session. In fact, it can be destructive if it's not controlled properly.
Right.
It can turn off a lot of people, including the people you're playing with, for Christ's sake. So, yes, I always sense from them their appreciation for what I do, and that's what feeds me. I mean, without it, you just never know. You never know, like, wow, should I have said that? Or, mm-hmm. Wow, that was really a bad idea. I hope they don't hate me for it.
Yeah, I'm never going to do another record with them again.
I mean, it's just like anything. You're always concerned about, how you're participating. But, these are forces to be reckoned with, these two guys.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, those two in particular, mm-hmm. probably more so than anyone else I've ever worked with. They are very prepared and very professional.
Yeah.
It's almost like the producer's job a lot of the times is to get out of the way.
Okay.
Be a facilitator. If you observe that something needs to be done, something needs to be said, something needs to be handled, that's your job. Take care of it.
Gotcha.
But if things are moving organically in a way that the artist has expressed to me, like how they want the sessions to be run. Mm-hmm. If it's rolling and people are playing well and they seem to be enjoying themselves, then my job is to not screw that up.
Exactly.
With some dumb idea, or or feel like, I'm not participating enough. I need to go out there and show them who the producer is.
Right, exactly.
And in both cases of Joe and with Paul and with many others, it's more co-production. And I probably should say at this point that I don't see myself as a producer. I see myself really as a recording engineer and facilitator.
I like that.
So, I do more than just engineer records.
Right.
That's for sure. Originally, that wasn't the case because that was all I knew how to do. But over time, over 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 years of making records, you start to learn about the process and a lot of the mistakes that can be made in recording studios. And you want to avoid those to save time and energy and oftentimes money for the client. So in those cases, you kind of start acting like a little bit of a producer. Like I don't think that 2 days of tracking and 1 day of vocals is going to get this record done.
Right.
I think we need more studio time, and I think we need to record it at this place. And you start to cross the line of being a recording engineer, and you start moving more and more into production.
Yeah.
The first time I was called a record producer was Joe and I had just finished Surfing with the Alien.
A beautiful, beautiful record.
And I was hired to engineer. That was my job, to engineer and facilitate, make whatever was going on in Joe's head at the time and try to make it come out speakers.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I don't know, but I tried, and that's what happened. And so he called me up and he says, I think that you should get production credit for Surfing, because you did so much more than just engineer it.
Sure.
So it's like, oh, wow. Well, thank you. I never thought of myself as the producer. I thought, because basically it was just him and I made that record.
Right.
I mean, we brought people in to do things, but he and I spent 90% of the time together making it. So once he said it, I bought it. It was like, yeah, of course. Yeah, I was. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like you warranted it. Yeah.
Record. Of course I did.
Yeah.
But up until then, I hadn't really thought about it. And then he said, oh, and by the way, because you're now co-producer, you're going to get a piece of the action. You're going to get royalties on the record.
Yep.
And that I hadn't expected. But at the time when Surfing was finished, neither one of us thought it would sell one record. So I thought, well, that's very nice of you, Joe.
Yeah.
And then he said, oh, and by the way, I'm also going to do this retroactively for Not of This Earth.
You got it. I did not know that.
Which was done in this basically the same fashion, but just very quickly. So that's the first time somebody called me a producer and gave me a production credit. So once that gets put in print on the back of a record, and of course, remember, back in '86, we were still making vinyl here. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, we were making vinyl and cassettes, and I think the first round of mastering we actually did CDs too.
Okay.
So when we got our gold record, it was a
combination.
Yeah, right. It was the vinyl disc, a cassette, and a CD, all haphazardly put on this panel. And
but that's
really
cool though too,
funny.
because today, it's nice to just be the person to be a recipient of that award, but that's even kind of extra cool. Because today, if a person's lucky enough to get one of those, what do they get, like an iTunes gold card or something?
I have no idea. It's ridiculous. I don't know. Streaming. I mean, how do you put that on a wall?
But
so
that's so cool.
I don't know if I answered the question.
Oh, I'm not even sure anymore either, but the answers are great.
Oh, and by the way, my wife handed me a glass of wine before I came downstairs to do this. And so that's when I'm sipping here. I don't know what it is. It's good.
Cheers.
She said, you're more chatty on wine.
Okay. So. Well, you're doing great. So cheers to you, my friend. Awesome.
Right. Cheers. All right.
Speaking of wine, our good friend Gary Holt is down from Wine Country in Paso. He says he's here and he doesn't have any scheduled electricity shut off yet, so that's good as well too.
Oh, good.
He's down in that area. So this is fantastic. That's such a cool story about Joe going retro on that as well too. But that's the thing.
And that is who Joe Satriani is, by the way.
I can see that.
That was before he was a rock star. Right?
Right.
This was before he had any real success. And he is the same way today.
Yeah.
He's the same guy.
I talk about him a lot on the show. There's a lot of guitar. Like I used to run a show that was all Van Halen themed. It used to be called EVH and Gear TV. It was all nothing but Eddie Van Halen. Love the man to death. But the other guitar players would come up a lot. The names like Joe Satriani, and not that I would put this next fellow in the same category as a shredder, but he is iconically just as he's brought so much to rock. Ace Frehley from Kiss, I love him to death. He's not a Joe Satriani. He's not a shredder, but he's Ace Frehley, right?
Yeah.
Paul Gilbert, of course. He's Paul Gilbert's been on the show. But Joe Satriani strikes me as, and I love Steve Vai. I love him to death, and they're all good friends. I'm just going to move your camera. Can I have you just bump over to your, I guess, there you can put right in there. Just don't have to adjust the camera here.
Right. Okay.
Joe is just one of those guys that the improv, I mean, I know he knows his game when he's going into the studio, but when you put him on the spot, like watching him jam Hendrix and stuff like that, he just oozes passion, and he can fly by the seat of his pants, and it sounds like it's been orchestrated for months.
Yes, he is a quintessential music teacher. He started as a music teacher, and I don't think that he's ever stopped. I think that he still studies music. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the classic sense.
Yes.
I mean, he really understands how music is put together.
Yeah.
A lot of, if you're playing the blues, you can study how it's put together, but at the end of the day, you're playing the blues, and obviously some do it a lot better than others. But Joe, when he is putting together an arrangement and writing a song, he has an infinite palette.
Yes.
To use to construct music with.
Yeah. That vocabulary is like volumes of encyclopedias. Remember back in the day when we would get those encyclopedias? The volumes of them? A lot of guitar players out there have a little trick book. Joe has encyclopedias.
In his brain.
Yeah.
That's in operation 24/7.
I know.
I mean, he is a musicologist. I mean, he really puts and he'll say things to me like, I'll look at him and I'll go, I have no idea what you just said at all. But I'm very interested, but I got a feeling it's going to take a few hours for you to explain that to me. And he'll do things and construct things in songs that he sometimes expects people to figure out and sort out or ask about or notice, and they don't. And I wouldn't say it frustrates him, but he often. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
He had done an album. I'm not sure which record it was. It wasn't a record. It wasn't a record that I worked on. It was a Fraser produced record. The Wormhole record, I think it is.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. But he said to me one day, he says, I put the sequence together so each song would move up in key. So it would start at one key, and by the end of the record, it would be at the final key or something. And he says, but nobody ever noticed. He says, when I go do interviews like in Japan with these kids that pay attention to that kind of stuff, nobody brought it up. Nobody noticed.
So he's probably bummed out.
I said to him, Joe, who would ever notice such a thing? And why would you sequence a record based on that? That's a really dumb idea. But, and that's, my relationship with Joe is.
You can say those things.
I can say pretty much whatever I want. I'm always, of course, respectful.
Yeah.
But we started off together, and I met him in '78. And he likes me because I pretty much say whatever's in my mind just comes out my mouth.
Yeah.
But I'm never cruel, and I'm never mean, and I'm never disrespectful. So he likes honesty, and he knows that if he's going down a path of what we call diminishing returns in the studio, we're in hour 3 of some solo or something, and I stand up and stretch and go, Joe, let's go home.
Yeah.
He'll go, yeah. And he'll just pack up and we'll go. It's that kind of thing.
He knows it.
Yeah.
He knows
it. He knows that I'm hearing and seeing and sensing something that he's just too caught up in what he's trying to do, and it's getting in the way of the goal. Yeah.
Before I jump into the 3 really good questions that come in from fans here as well, 2 viewers, I'll just share something that's really something you can share this with Joe, because it's a very personal story that I think he'll appreciate. So my son Eric Jr. here, he's a musician now. He's 13 years old. He's playing a lot. He plays just about every instrument there is. But you know what? As a child, you get those things. I think they call them exercisers. You put them in there, and they got like little toys they can play with. They can bounce into things. They got little wheels. They can run around the house. So I'd be playing all my Van Halen bootlegs and all that stuff for Junior, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He's like probably a year and a half, 2 years old, in this little thing. I'm not sure how old he was, but a toddler. I'd pop on the Joe Satriani Live in San Francisco, like some of these, the various DVDs Joe would be putting out back in the day, and he called one of his first words before mom and dad was JoJo. JoJo,
Oh.
It was his words. So it was just all the lighting. It was the guitar stuff, and he was mesmerized. We have some videos somewhere where I don't think he blinked for 40 minutes. Like his eyes would just seize up dry. So there's a little story for Joe when you see him next time. So you can say the fellow that was on the show, his son was a JoJo fan since, a year and a half.
Okay, a JoJo fan that got mesmerized by Live in San Francisco.
Yeah, the Stu
right.
the Stu Hand stuff and all that. That was great. So awesome. Here's jump over to some really, really cool questions. So back to some things that are close to your heart. John Mulvey, who I mentioned earlier, he asked, "What is John's favorite mixing desk?"
Ooh, for mixing. Mm-hmm. Now, understand that there are some consoles that I prefer for recording on.
Yep.
And then there's other ones that I prefer mixing on.
Right.
So, if I'm going to take his question literally, I'd say an SSL.
Okay.
Yeah. Recording, it would be, it kind of depends on the project. If it's a lot of acoustic instruments and we're looking for more of a clean, open, dynamic sound, an API would be my choice for recording. If it's a rock record, heavy, full-bodied rock record, then of course it would have to be a Neve. Early 80 series Neve console, yeah.
Great answers. Here's a question from Antonello. Says, to ask John, did you ever work with any artists at any time that was not completely in agreement with some of your production choices? And if it happened, how did you solve it? I'm sure that had to come up a few times.
Well, again, I got to go back to what I was saying. I never thought of myself as a producer.
Right.
So I'm not one to argue with clients about production decisions on their part. Really, it's their record, and I respect that. One thing, anecdotally, I'll just point out, a lot of times in the course of doing a recording of a song, for instance, you get to a place where it's just not working. Mm-hmm. And you've got 5, 6 people in the room, including myself. We all know it's not working, but no one person can articulate why it's not working.
Right.
And so at that point, things kind of grind to a halt. And that can be problematic because, budgetarily, mm-hmm. Because a lot of the records that I did, particularly in the 80s and 90s, in the 80s particularly, we had budgets of, say, $25,000. $25,000 to $50,000 was a typical budget. Mm-hmm. And I had to sit down in advance and really work out the day-to-day activities, how we are going to allot the time for these activities. So if we get to a point where a song is just absolutely not working and nobody has an answer to it,
scrap it.
That's, well, maybe. But that's kind of the job up for a producer now. I mean,
Sure.
the producer better come in and go, okay, guys, I know what to do.
Change his chorus, get rid of this section here, shorten it up.
We need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. So there are times where one has to kickstart a process that maybe has gotten bogged down in some kind of argument or confusion, or bands rehearse, and when they rehearse, they don't often record themselves. Particularly in the 80s, people didn't have facilities to record themselves very easily, so they think they're doing a great job, and they may come to the studio, and a lot of times I'll do pre-production, but you get into the studio and start recording it, and you start listening to it back, and you go, wow, that's really not working. That really sucks.
Yeah.
So a producer has to step in and start making some suggestions and throwing it. Now, great producers, guys like George Martin and Quincy Jones and Don Was, and I could go down the list of the A-list record producers. They could turn shit into something that is
Shinola.
like into something that is really great.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not that kind of producer. I'm an engineer.
Gotcha.
But I can say to myself, wow, what that guitar player has been playing is really cool. Why don't we focus on the good stuff and the things that aren't working, like that turnaround fill going into the bridge that drummer keeps trying to play that he keeps failing at. I can sort of like go, okay, well, let's eliminate that, and work with the band and sort of take care of the obvious, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so oftentimes in the course of doing that, as an objective person sitting on the other side of the glass listening to this, because when you're playing it, you don't often know what's going on.
True.
You're listening to your own part. So as the objective person on the other side of the glass, I go, man, every time they go into that second chorus, they pull way back in tempo. I was like, why is that? That shouldn't be happening.
Right.
Those are the kind of things that an engineer / producer should be noticing, and those are the things you can go in and help them with. Sometimes you might have someone in the band point out to you that that's a bad idea, and they don't want to cooperate. And my feeling is that if somebody in the band is really objecting to something, whether it's my idea or somebody else's, they're probably right.
Oh, good.
They're probably right. They're not being an a-hole.
Right.
They're picking up something internally that we need to all pay attention to. So the lesson here I'll share with everybody is someone in your band is vehemently objecting to something, it's because internally it's rubbing them really the wrong way. And so you could just assume that if it's going to rub him the wrong way, it might rub 1,000 people the wrong way.
That's right.
The same wrong way, if you will.
The thing is, if it's sitting on the store shelves after the fact, you haven't said a word, well, you had your chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people instinctively know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And when a band's sitting around a room and they're scratching their heads going, wow, this really is not good, and somebody thinks they know why, then I pay attention to them.
That's good. That's great advice. And I mean, I'm sure there's some times where the lead singer may say the guitar solo is too loud, just to be that guy. But there's probably a lot of times where it might only be one voice out of a group that is well served.
Well, if he said it at every mixing session,
yeah, it's a little
for
bit
every
different.
Guitar solo,
yeah,
I would say, yeah, he's an asshole. Get him out of here.
That's right. Okay.
But if he said it once,
yep,
I would go,
you might have a point there.
Oh, you know what? He's probably right.
Yeah.
He just came in off the street, walked in, he heard it, and that was his immediate gut reaction.
Yeah.
We're all caught up in it, so, he's probably right.
Yeah.
Pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Well said.
Yeah.
Here's a technical question from Edwin, and this may have changed from time to time. You may know, may not know, may have changed. Edwin asked, "What was Joe's favorite mic for his cab?"
Oh, he never had a favorite microphone.
Whatever worked, right?
Yeah. You want to get into that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
That's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I
think the fans will like that for sure.
It's a thing.
Yep.
I grew up. I started as doing live sound. A lot of recording engineers grew up doing live sound because those were the only consoles people would let us touch, right?
Sure.
So, when you would work in clubs and small halls, or you were touring, dynamic microphones and microphones that you could, heavy duty mics that you could nail with.
Oh yeah, 57s or 58. Put stuff in the wall. They use them for hammers.
Yeah, really strong.
Yep.
Microphones that will really last. Those are the ones you were given to work with. So the SM57 became sort of a de facto microphone, and it came from the live world.
Sure.
Because it was what was on people's cabinets. And of course, when bands then started going into studios and recording, the engineers in their suits and ties or white coats or whatever, they'd put up their big capsule Neumann, whatever, expensive condenser microphone and mic it from 5 feet away because this is what we do. And of course, it wouldn't sound right, wouldn't sound good, and it wouldn't sound like the band live. So, we started using those in studios, the same, $100 microphones. And, the SM57 has a lot of qualities to it that lend itself to loud guitar amplifiers. The fact that it can stand a high sound pressure level.
Yeah.
The fact that it has proximity effect, meaning that the closer you get it to the speaker, the low end will build up. And to isolate electric guitar with loud drums and other loud electric guitars, you want to have the microphone as close to the amp as possible. So you have this added effect. It sometimes can be a detriment. And it has a frequency, it has a boost at the top end, primarily for vocalists, but it works good on electric guitars because it opens up the top that you can later kill. Now that's just really general. And like the NS10 monitor speakers that you saw on consoles for all throughout the 80s and 90s, they became de facto monitors for studios. The SM57 became the de facto, and maybe some guitar player, maybe it was Eddie Van Halen, I don't know who it was, said in some magazine at some point that this is what they had, and everybody ran out and got those and used those and things like that. At the end of the day, really, what are you doing? You're making a record. You're manipulating sound. There are a dozen variables in play here. You have the player themselves, in other words, the notes they choose to play, how they play the guitar. God knows, you take Jeff Beck's guitar off him and hand him to Eric. Guess what? You're not going to sound like Jeff Beck,
not
right?
Not at all. Not the volume, not the dynamic, not the approach.
Exactly. So the player has a lot to do with it. The guitar itself, we all know, has a lot to do with the sound. Whatever the hell that guy's got plugged in, it plugged into, whether it's a wah-wah or any of the 12,000 different versions of stomp boxes.
Yep, tone suckers in there.
And then it goes to what? A guitar amp, and we all know that there's dozens and dozens of guitar amplifiers, and then into a speaker cabinet with a dozen different types of speakers.
Exactly.
Right? And so to say that an SM57 is definitely the mic to use is for what? I mean, it doesn't always work well. However, if you're doing a live gig and I have an SM57 and I have some Japanese mic that I've never heard of, and I've got a rock band on stage, I'm going to pick the 57.
Sure.
That's the microphone I'm going to put. Why? Because I know the microphone.
Right.
It's reliable. I know what it is. I know what it sounds like. I know what it does. And that is everything.
Yeah.
You know, that eliminates the variable, the variable of at least the microphone, right? All the other things I have no control over.
That's right.
I don't have control over the guy. Don't have control over his guitar, his stomp box, his amplifier, his speaker cabinet, and whatever effing speakers he's got in that speaker. I have no control over it. Sometimes I don't even have control over where that microphone is placed on the speaker cabinet. If I have a stage hand that's sticking microphones up there, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you can't even say I want it over here, and that's the thing. We've opened up the biggest.
The only variable I have control over is knowing that microphone.
That's it.
So that's one of the reasons why it's become a de facto microphone.
Yeah.
Right now, let's go to a recording session with me and Joe.
Okay.
Right. Joe says to me, he says, "Man, I want some big, fat, aggressive, thumpy rhythm guitars in the left and the right channel for this song.
Okay.
I want the song to start with this big thing. I want it to sound like a Godzilla stepping on cars or something." Well, okay. All the variables I just mentioned are in play. And so I think about microphones. And if you've been a recording engineer long enough, you start to understand what certain mics can do and what certain mics can't do. So it being my job to give Joe what he wants, I'll go to the microphone cabinet and go, okay, that might work. That might work. That will definitely not work. That's the wrong mic. Let me try this. So I might go out and put 3 or 4 different microphones on his cabinet. I don't tell him what they are.
Yeah, because that's right.
He doesn't even care what they are. He's usually in the control room with me. He'll play, and then I'll have the faders in front of me, and I'll just open up one of the mics, and he'll play for a minute, and he'll go, okay, next one, and I'll open up the next one. He'll go, oh, no, what is that?
Doesn't work, right? Bring it back.
Why did you put that mic up? Well, turn that off. And then I'll open up another one, and he'll go, yeah, I'm kind of digging that, but I don't know, it's a bit too woolly sounding. Okay, let me go out. I'll pull the microphone back off the speaker just about 4 inches,
Sure.
and that'll maybe cure some of the woolliness, right? So he'll go out and do that. Now, he may not even know what those microphones are.
Sure.
You know.
And that's a good
thing. Sometimes I might write them on the console, 57,
of course.
C12A, or whatever it is. But he doesn't care.
Right.
All he cares about is it delivering the sound we want. And then sometimes we'll go through a bunch of mics, and he'll go, I don't like any of them. And then he'll look. Then we have to have the conversation. Well, it's probably not the mic. I just gave you a huge variety of microphones. Maybe the problem is that guitar. And he'll take his guitar and go, yeah, you know what? Let me go try something else. He'll take it. So it is a constant, nonstop experimentation of microphones, a continuous rotation of microphones, stomp boxes, amplifiers, speakers, to paint the painting. We're like painters. We're painting a picture in sound, and Joe is looking for something really specific. Like it or not, given any of Joe's material, and there's hundreds, maybe 1,000 pieces of music now to listen to. Like it or not, I can absolutely assure you that in probably most cases, the guitar sound that you hear is 100% deliberate.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's deliberate. And that's not to say that 5, 8, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, Joe and I don't listen to those and go, wow, what were we thinking?
Yeah, what was our thought process there?
Why did we do that? That is terrible. I mean, we can be our own worst critics.
Of course.
And sometimes going back and looking back in retrospect with all that we've learned, we can be very, very judgmental about it. Up to a point, we don't beat ourselves up about it. We know that at the time we were trying to do something, and we may now believe we were or were not successful at it, but people liked it, people responded to it, and we've made dozens of records since then, and we're going to, make dozens of records more. So if you like it, great. If you don't, that's okay.
Yeah. I like the idea of not actually labeling the mics, because I find a lot of times in life when we're told what something is, like I talked about this the other day on when I was demoing with my helix. I was playing my helix. That's what I use pretty much. I don't use amplifiers anymore. And I was looking at a speaker cab, and I had a speaker cab block in helix, and then I had an impulse response. And looking at the editor on my screen, my eyes were telling me that I liked the impulse response better, right? So, and I thought, okay, I like that one much better. This was just some generic impulse responses at the time. And then I put it on an A/B so I could toggle with my foot switch. I could toggle between a speaker cab and an impulse response. So looking at it, my eyes told me one thing. I turned around, and I'm toggling back and forth. I'm sitting there playing, and just like you said, how Joe said, okay, that sounds nice. So when I found the spot that sounded nice to my ears, I immediately thought it was going to be this. And I looked at it, and sure enough, I was wrong. My eyes deceived me, but my ears told me the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would encourage guitar players who are recording at home or in studios to not make any assumptions about microphones at all. Because, moving a microphone just like an inch in either direction can completely change the sound of that one microphone.
For sure.
So there's lots of things one can do to help you arrive to that place that is right for the song, because it's all about the song, really. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're creating, emotional
compositions,
composition renditions of human emotion. So we're looking for those tools to get us there.
That's right.
And don't assume that because you read somewhere that so-and-so uses a particular guitar, a particular stomp box, well, that was fine for that song on that day,
That's right.
But that doesn't guarantee you anything. So, on Joe's records, there's lots of different microphones being used, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, on Crushing Day we used an AKG C12A, which we might have, because I love that microphone, because it's kind of useless information, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because unless you have Joe and that guitar setup in that studio on that console running on that piece of tape with me in the room EQing the hell out of whatever I was doing, unless all that is in play, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I mean, and then even if you had all that, you end up with maybe something that's identical. Well, so what? It's like, is imitating somebody your thing? I mean, is that your goal in life? It wasn't Joe's, or Paul Gilbert. I mean, or any of your heroes. I mean, they're not out trying to sound like some other guy.
They're putting their own stamp on it.
Exactly, and they put their own stamp on it because they don't care about that crap. So, I'm here to tell you, it don't matter.
A good thing to take away from that is, all these guys, if we're chasing the Joe Satrianis, if we're chasing the Eddie Van Halens, we buy the Van Halen amps, we buy the signature pedals. Joe has his own signature line of guitars and pedals and that kind of stuff too. The only person who's going to recreate that, so you make some production notes in the studio. You go home on a Saturday night, you come back on a Sunday. So we were micing Joe's cabinet with a SM57 on the 412. He uses 24 fret Ibanez, blah, blah, blah. Those are those notes that you've made. That will only work for Joe coming back the next day. It's Joe Satriani. It's his guitar. It's that amp. It's that 57. We didn't move anything. That's the only way it's going to sound like Joe Satriani on day two. There's great players out there that can probably get in the wheelhouse. But, no matter what, those pedals, those amps, those signature things are not going to be exactly like the tone coming from the individual who created it.
Yeah, they're selling themselves short.
Mm-hmm.
They're not allowing themselves to, maybe it's scary to kind of like do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I listen to like some of our really early records,
yeah.
Some of the guitar sounds are really questionable. Let me put it that way. But in context of the album and the piece of work, they're perfect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I like that.
In other words, if you take that guitar solo from Surfing with the Alien,
mm-hmm.
The guitar solo, if I remember correctly, is like 2 or 3 sections of it. Like the second section, we kick on something and it's really gnarly sounding. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it works for that song.
Sure.
And we left it. I mean, at the time, when we mixed it, we knew what we were doing, and that's what we wanted to do, and we put our stamp of approval on it.
You signed
off.
But
if you took that guitar sound and put it on pretty much anything else, including anything Joe's ever recorded, it would be a bad idea.
Yep.
So I would just tell guitar players, man, have fun, man. Explore outside of the realms of traditional.
I agree.
And that's where you're going to find your muse. That's where you're going to find that thing that makes you different and special,
Well, look at I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but a lot of our fans that watch the guitar shows here, they're sci-fi freaks and stuff like that as well, geeks. And look
Mm-hmm.
at Star Wars in the late 70s. Look what they had then to do what they did, and look what we have available today for entertainment, movies, Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. So you're talking about what you did on a guitar album back in the day compared to what you can do now, but it spoke. And Star Wars, I mean, I hate to use Star Wars and music as an analogy, but look what it did. It blows away most things today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And in a second, I want to jump over to talking about live engineering, like mixing consoles for live bands and things like that. I want to share a note with you, but there's a good question here, John Mulvey, who's got some great questions tonight. I think I know the answer to this one, but he's asking, do you still work at Hyde Street Studios?
No.
Okay, didn't think you worked there. And he has a second question, which is something we're going to talk about later on in the program tonight, but we can address it now. So these days, the term reamping comes up all the time. It's like reamping, and it is technology available to you, but a lot of people don't know, where does this thing come from? So you were the catalyst behind that. So maybe in two forms here, you can tell us, how you came about it. And John's question says, have you changed the reamp design? What is the signal chain preference for rock guitar? So tell us a little bit about reamping and maybe to address John's question too.
Well, in 1993, I was working on Joe's album Time Machine.
Yep, double disc.
Yep. The second disc is a live recording. We brought it back to the studio. We began mixing the live portion of the album. And I noticed that Stu Ham's bass, the recording, it was split. It was his amplifier and a direct, which is very common technique in recording bass guitar. You always take a DI and you take a
blend.
And oftentimes we'll blend them together. The DI track was fine, but the amplifier track had some pretty nasty hum and buzz and noise on it. I think something switched sometime from the sound check to the time of the show. I didn't notice it in the truck when I was recording it because I think I might have just had the DI up.
Okay.
I didn't notice it. When you're recording a live show and you're tracking 30 channels at once, even if I were to solo Stu's bass and notice a hum and buzz, there's probably a pretty good chance there's not a whole lot I might have been able to do about it.
On the fly.
On the fly. Sometimes you might send a guy out on stage to try to make the correction. But anyway, Stu's recorded amplifier was unacceptable. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're mixing a live record, you need the growl distortion, if you will, the sound of a live bass amp. That has to be part of the sound. Otherwise, it's too sterile sounding. So I said, well, we need to take the direct track, we need to put it into an amplifier and re-record it. Mm-hmm. Feed it out to a bass amp or a guitar amp, it doesn't matter what, and stick a microphone on it and record that, and we'll use that and mix it with the DI. Very common thing to do. However, there was no real
technology.
There was no real device that was ever manufactured for people to take a +4 balanced line level signal out of in this case, a Studer tape recorder, and plug it into a guitar amplifier or bass amplifier.
As an output, like output into the input.
Plug it directly into it and make that amp think that a bass guitar is plugged into it, which is sitting around -50. I mean, it basically just completely distorts the front end of the amplifier.
Right.
It's not very usable. So I started thinking, well, there's got to be a way to do this, because here we are in a studio and we have all kinds of different types of a recording console has dozens of different gain stages to it that are all being adjusted and refined and controlled through transformers and circuit designs and stuff. So I went to a tech and I said, look, make me a circuit that will take the +4 line level signal out of a Studer tape recorder and drop it down to a signal that looks like the output of a bass guitar. Okay, just make me that circuit. So, we did some experimenting and fooled around, and I ended up with this box with a transformer in it and a small circuit that essentially did that. It just dropped the signal down and adjusted the impedance to give me a flat frequency response and no distortion, and it goes right into a bass amp. And so I did that. We did that over the course of a couple of days. I came back to the studio, took Stu Ham's bass direct track, fed it into this makeshift little box I built, and into a bass amplifier. I think it was an SVT or something.
Probably 810.
And I turned it up, and it was like Stu was standing in the room playing.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, that actually works. I mean, and Joe walked in and said, man, it's like Stu's in the room playing.
Because I'm sure Stu's performance was perfect, as he is, but it's just the capture because something was wrong.
Yes, because what's the alternative now? I mean, what would have been the alternative? Have Stu come back in and replay all his parts? God, no, we never want to do that. That'd be terrible. People used to do that.
Yeah.
But I said no. I mean, now we have his performance. So I put a microphone on it, and we had time. We could kick back and get it dialed in right and set the limiter right. We could do all the things to get a really nice recording. So we went ahead and sat back, and I spent the day just tracking everything from that live show to another channel as a reamp channel. So I took the box and didn't think much else. It solved that problem. I went on to make other records. And then I started thinking, I could start using this thing for other things besides just the bass.
Guitar.
Like guitar, and I could start putting all kinds of things. Anything that's been recorded onto a tape recorder, I can now put into a stomp box because it sees the same signal.
Sure.
Or a guitar amplifier. So I started fooling around and having fun with it. So some of the other local engineers in town saw what I was doing, and they wanted one. And after a while, people kept asking me for it, and it went around town. And finally, I built. To make a very long story short, I built 5. Then I built 50.
Oh boy.
And then after that, it was like, oh, I think I'm in the reamp business now.
Not recording it. No, I know.
Yeah, because now, besides being a full-time recording engineer and producer, I'm now a manufacturer.
Yeah.
So me and my buddies would get together on like a Saturday afternoon, and we would sit down at a big table, and we would wire these things up. And it got a bit tedious, and it got a bit expensive. And, I started passing them around. When I built the 50, I handed them out to a bunch of different recording engineers all over town in L.A. Mm-hmm. And just a word of mouth. It was one thing happened, somebody listened to it and thought it was great. And so I had it. I was building reamps. It got to a point where I had to have people build them. I went to an actual third party and had them build them for me. And I did that for about 17 years. And it got to a point where tape recorders were no longer involved. We were in the digital age now. People were recording at home.
Yeah.
I was selling reamps to kids and prosumers, and they were doing dumb stuff with it, like blowing them up.
Jeez.
And I was fixing a lot of them that I used to never have to do before when I was selling to professionals.
Yeah.
And I was getting a lot of headaches. So Radial out of Canada came to me, and they wanted to buy it. They wanted to buy the name, and they wanted to buy the patent that I had for it. And so it took about a year because we went back and forth, went around and around, but eventually I sold the patent and the name to Radial, and they're still building them.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that on the website today, as a matter of fact.
So it was it was something that needed to be built. At the time, I didn't know if people were going to find it useful, but they did, fortunately, and it was a good little business. I had a good little run with it, and I sold it for a good little profit. So
that's good.
I'm happy with it. And I'm happy that people continue to use it. I think it's pretty cool.
It's become a process now in a studio. It's something needed at the time. We look at that with Joe would say this with tremolos, Floyd Rose and the Ibanez tremolos and all these things that were, if something was needed, and look where we are with that now. It's changed how guitar is played, and all this kind of thing. So yeah, you contributed a lot to the scene for sure. That's a fantastic story. I'm glad to hear it. And it's nice because more people need to know about it. Not everyone does. So a very, very cool share.
Well, it is a hardware device, of course, because we're taking something out of and nowadays out of your workstation, out of your DAW, and it would be then go to the box, and in the box it would go to a guitar amplifier or a stomp box, and then it gets re-recorded. I think your earlier question was, what is this good signal path?
Yeah.
You want to record the guitar direct to your workstation with no EQ, nothing, just right out of the guitar to a nice, clean, the cleanest direct box signal you have. If you've got like a Focusrite outboard interface, or when any of those PreSonus interfaces, whatever they are, record your guitar direct. Those things are really clean. They don't particularly color the sound of your guitar. Just get a nice, good, clean signal there. Don't limit it. Don't EQ it. Just record your guitar onto that. Once that's recorded, you can now take the output of that and run it into any kind of reamping device. There's many of them available now besides the ones Radial makes.
Yep.
And plug it into a guitar amplifier and mic it up like you would normally would.
It's perfect.
Think of it as a insurance policy.
Exactly. That's a very good way to look at it. I can give an example here. I'm using all digital now myself, running Helix. Now there's millions of modelers out there, but with Helix, I can send. Let's say I want to just pick up an old Plexi amplifier in a 412 cabinet, and that's going to be my sound I'm going to send to my DAW. But I can also at the same time on another track send just raw USB. It's basically clean audio right directly to the computer, and then I can go back later on and say, you know what, that Marshall doesn't sound good. Let's run it through a PV, or let's run it through a Mesa or whatever. And
Perfect.
So there again, it's like that Stu Ham is in the room again. Stu Ham's performance was really good. Let's just see, because Stu can't come back today. Let's see what he'd sound like running through this little small 15-inch speaker as opposed to the Ampeg 410 or 810, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, guitar players. How many times have you re-recorded a guitar performance because you didn't like the sound of it, but the performance wasn't as good?
I know. You might have nailed it. The best your ability and the sound wasn't the best. I sometimes would go with better performance with, okay, we could have been better on that sound, but you captured it, man.
Yeah.
Performance.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got a great performance, man, what a shame to have to throw it away because of the sound. Well, just record it direct while you're recording it through an amp and stuff. I mean, you can try to do it the first time, right? And most of the time you do. But when I did Shockwave Supernova with Joe, he had recorded a lot of his guitars at home because he's inspired at home.
Sure.
As he should be.
Comfort zone.
Yeah, he comes, and he works on his compositions and works on his parts, and he recorded them through, I don't know, Axe Effectsy thingy, whatever, to get something that sounds like a guitar amp and stuff. But he also recorded everything direct. So when we got to a point with the record, we booked a studio. We set up all his amplifiers that he had at the time, which are many.
Mm-hmm.
And I put microphones of all types on all these amps. And then we had this blast of just sitting there feeding all these amps these direct guitar recordings and finding the perfect guitar sound for the song.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And it's a luxury that, a guy with a recording budget gets to have, granted. But, on a smaller scale, pretty much any guitar player can do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's totally amazing the world we live in today. Now we can do these kind of things, and I mean, the budgets are not there. Especially you're lucky to get any kind of a deal these days as it is. So it's all crowdfunding, it's indie funding, your self on your credit card. So I mean, it's we don't have that luxury like some of these bands did back in the day. But there was never a luxury period because a lot of that stuff was advanced anyways. We'll give you $250,000 to do this. That includes your tour, blah blah blah. And, the bands out there buying cars, and meanwhile, they got to pay all that stuff back, and they haven't even gone on tour yet.
Yeah, I know. And I recently saw a recording contract, a recording contract that is being used today.
Okay.
And I was like blown away
I can imagine.
At what the record company is taking a piece of. Basically, they take everything.
Yeah.
They want a piece of everything. It used to be back in the day, they would take a piece of the record, of course, because they're basically fronting you the money to make the record. So they basically own the performance, they own the recording, and of course they should get paid. I mean, they put up they're taking the risk. If you suck and you don't sell any records, then they take a hit.
That's right.
Well, you know what? They do this with 100 acts. If 5 of them go big, that pays for the rest, right? Yeah. I mean, so, I understand that. But because nobody's making money selling records anymore,
no,
they need to do what they do. They need to have a little piece of everything, merchandise. You sell a T-shirt with your band name on it, they get a piece of it.
Oh, yeah.
That was unheard of even 5 years ago.
Oh, I know. So, well, that's the thing, too. If people ever have this question, why are we seeing so many of these, maybe even 70s, 80s, 90s bands coming back, no new record, no touring. There's a reason for it, because touring right now for those, and a lot of these bands will come back. They don't even have a new record, not even a new single. They'll just come out and they'll tour. But, none of them, I shouldn't say none of them. I mean, many of them had hits, and, they're probably doing very, very well. But a lot of them only maybe had a hit or two. And, paying for that nice house or paying for whatever they may have, the only way to do it is to tour, maybe some merchandise sales. Because as you say, the sales are just even now it's streaming. I saw such a horrendous stat the other day online. I'm not going to quote the stat because I'll get it wrong, but it's like so many thousand streams compared to was equal to one album sale, what the individuals would make. And it's shocking. More and more people getting exposure, but exposure doesn't pay the bills for the electricity and gas and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not making records for 13, 14-year-olds, you're kind of out of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not even taken seriously. You're not even on a record company's radar with less than 20 million streams. Think about it.
I know.
20 million streams.
I know.
And the thing about teenagers is that they latch onto a song and they play it 10 times.
Yeah.
They play it 20 times. They play it 30 times a day. It becomes part of their life. Us old folks, we don't do that. We listen to a song, we listen to it 2 or 3 times, and then we, listen to something else.
Yeah.
Teenagers, they like to listen to stuff over and over and over and over again. Well, the record companies know that.
Yeah.
So
that's why those streaming services are great for them.
So, obviously the focus right now is selling for major labels anyway, is that 13 to 14-year-old. Now, the hip-hop rap community, they have their sort of insulated bubble, and if you break into that, it's sort of a known entity, and they have a way to distribute amongst themselves and produce these overnight sensations that are all driving around in Lamborghinis. But, of course, in 3 years from now, I don't know where they'll be.
I know.
So
who knows?
Yeah, it's a very, very different time, very different market.
That's right. Yeah. We have about 15 more minutes left in the program, and there's a few questions I want to make sure I nail on, especially some of the guitar players will appreciate this.
You go. I'll try to keep it shorter, too.
No, listen, no, hey, no, you're doing great, man. You're making it easy for me. But Joe has and I apologize, too, we're talking a lot about Joe tonight, but we all love Joe as well, just like you do. And Joe has this long-running history, a great endorsement relationship with Ibanez. I mean, he's been with him forever. But, before working with Ibanez, you can probably see just over my shoulder, you see a nice, beautiful red Kramer back there, Kramer Pacer. And, the Ibanez, so to speak, was kind of an evolution of a lot of different things for Joe, but bringing in I think he had a couple of white Pacers, and maybe kind of hodgepodge, different parts on both, whatever. And I think maybe both of them made their way to surfing. Do you remember those days of bringing the Kramers in, and were they temperamental for him, or was it something how was that whole synergy between him and the Kramer?
He was always fooling with it.
Okay, yeah.
So, in a very non-technical, very non-guitar centric answer would be, he was always fooling with them.
Right.
In other words, he set up his own guitar. He would mute strings with different methods, and adjust the bridge and the intonation depending on where he was on the neck.
Gotcha.
For instance, if we were punching in a section where he was way up high up on the neck, and he wanted the intonation to be perfect
for that section,
then we would set the guitar up, or he would set the guitar up so the intonation was exactly what he wanted. And then this is analog tape days, so I would punch in and punch out for that one. It could be just one line or something that he wanted it to have perfect intonation. I mean, it was like that. It was always a constant, like, fighting the guitar,
right?
And trying to make this guitar do what he was asking it to do,
right? in that day too, it was, very entry level. I mean, the Floyd Rose had just kind of made its way onto the guitars, so we're kind of breaking new ground. So a lot of learning curve.
No, and anytime he grabbed that whammy bar, I knew we were only good for like, another 10 seconds or so. We would have to stop.
Yeah.
Because if he would pull that thing back or push it down, we would have to stop and he would have to retune and stuff. So, yeah.
I like that you shared the fact, though, that you've intonated for a registry on the guitar. So, like, if you intonated for, like, the 12th to the 22nd fret and you hit an open chord, it's probably going to sound horrible, but it sounded great from the 12th to the 22nd. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Here's something I found is very, very important. Is one thing I didn't want to miss touching base on, because I saw you share this on Facebook a while back, and I thought this was such a cool thing about you.
I share all sorts of things on Facebook.
I know, and I love it. And thank you for being my friend.
So be careful.
I know. That's good.
I'm very vocal.
Hey, that's good. And thank you for being my friend on Facebook. I'm very honored, to say the least. Yeah, but you shared that nice big process of taking what I thought was 2 skids. It looked like 2 skids, maybe more, of boxes of tapes, converting those to digital. Tell us about that process, what that involved. That was amazing.
You're talking about Joe's analog tape collection.
Yeah.
Right. Well, technically the record company owns the masters.
Of course.
In other words, when they give us a budget to record and we buy 20 rolls of 2-inch tape and we do an album, technically we're supposed to send all that stuff back to the record company. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we did and sometimes we didn't. Wasn't because we were trying to withhold anything, but it was sometimes not convenient or for whatever reasons we didn't. But, collected over the years, it just collected and collected. And it got to a point like in our late 90s where I said to Joe, at some point we're going to have to transfer this analog to digital. Mm-hmm. Well, in the 90s, digital was still in its infancy.
Right.
I mean, it started in the 80s, but even by the 90s, we were still a bit skeptical about it.
Like the Floyd Rose on a guitar at the early onset. It was like, ooh, do we go there? Right?
Yeah. I mean, it was, do we really want to do this now? Mm-hmm. So we waited. And eventually, around 2016 or so, I started the process of transferring all the analog multi-tracks to digital, high resolution digital, everything at 9624 with the best converters available. I felt that was
the best
the way
preservation
to go, and a safe bet. So it took a while, and we did it. We didn't get all the records because Sony still had some of them. I mean, and then when we got into this awkward period of going from analog to digital, where we didn't have tapes anymore, but we had boxes and boxes of hard drives.
Oh, okay.
Well, which hard drive do we save?
Right.
We have to, first of all, we have to open it up. We have to get it into Pro Tools and open it up. Whoa. My new Pro Tools system doesn't open up the old Pro Tools files.
Oh, boy.
So that was one hurdle, we had to get over, was getting, the sessions to open up. So once I got past that process, then I had to go in and really take a look at everything and figure out, wow, is this what was used for the final mix, or the labeling? It got crazy, and it took a long time to figure it out.
Kind of a scavenger hunt or a goose chase.
Yeah, there was at least probably 8 or 9 records that were all analog, 100%, and then from around 90. From Crystal Planet on, it started going to digital.
Right.
So the first record I did with Joe on digital was Strange, Beautiful Music.
Okay.
That was the first digital record I made with Joe. So from that point on, everything else has been digital, and there's hard drives all over the place. At his house, at Mike Frazier's studio, I mean, just everywhere. So I had to get it all together. And so we ended up doing it. And then Joe said, well, now what are we going to do with all the tapes? And I said, well, we should send them all to Sony because they actually own them.
Yeah.
So we gathered all the tapes and they were on these pallets. And I took a picture of it.
Yeah.
There's just hundreds of them. And we sent them all to Pennsylvania. It's going to go into a cave or some shit. I don't know. But the fact is, I got every note that Joe had recorded of all those tapes onto one hard drive.
Like 5 terabyte or something?
6 terabyte drive.
Wow.
Everything on a 6 terabyte drive.
Isn't that something?
Now, I duplicated that drive 4 or 5 times. I did it with solid state drives.
Platters, a combination of everything.
Yeah, a combination of everything, and we spread them out all over the place. So
for safety.
We're covered. If we want to get back to anything, no problem.
That's fantastic. And actually, Gary Filner here in the chat has a good question, and it alludes to this totally with the Universal fire. So many things were lost there.
Yeah.
This is perfect timing, right? I'm not sure if that had any catalyst to it, but still, now you've got redundancy. You've got them all over the place. And just to think about it, look at the old days of us. All of us were in the VHS and beta days with all of our movie collections. And one day, we could actually have one disc now that would fill rooms of VHS tapes, or maybe just a hard drive. We're into streaming movies at home and things like that. One little box takes care of rooms, and in this case, skids or pallets of tape.
Yeah. No, it's incredible.
It is for sure.
And to have, instant access to everything. I mean, if Joe says to me, hey, do you have a copy of blah, 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 blah? No problem. I throw the drive in, pull it up. I can do a rough mix of that song or whatever, give him the final mix or whatever it was.
FTP it over to him.
Anything that he has recorded since 1986.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yep. Send him a Dropbox link or an FTP link, and he's got it in 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. A couple other things I want to touch base on, and I want to extend an invitation to you to come back on again later on because we've got so many more things on the agenda. We'll reach out to you again. I told you this was going to be great. I want. This is a perfect time to maybe share the story. When I first reached out to you on Facebook, and I'm kind of talking to the viewers at this moment. I asked John to come on the show, and he's like, I don't know really what I can bring to the table because it's more guitar centric and stuff like that. And I think the timing of this was perfect because I kind of rebranded the channel, going from just focusing on one thing, and now by making it Music Gear Network, I can talk to journalists, I can talk to recording engineers and producers like yourself, and I feel so good about making that change because I would have never had a chance to speak to someone with the what you've brought to this industry, but. One of the things I love about you is the YouTube channel, which we have in the link down below, and there's a reason why I want people to check this out, the One Mic series. So, if there's people out there that, a home hobbyist recording, enthusiasts, and they'll stick 15 mics all over the place, think they're going to get some good sound. They probably can, maybe they can't. I'm not one of those people. I can't get good sounds on microphones. I never will. Maybe one day I'll stop saying I can't and I'll try. But you capture some of these artists with one microphone in the room, the One Mic series. And I think that's possibly how you worked and end up meeting with Paul Gilbert. But tell us a little bit about that series and what people can expect from that.
Well, it started a bit as kind of a goof, if you will.
Sure.
I was working with a band in a studio making a conventional recording, multi-track recording. And I had just obtained this microphone by AEA called the AEA R88, which is a stereo ribbon microphone.
Okay.
And I was kind of captivated by the microphone for a number of reasons, but I don't have to get into. But I thought to myself, if there's ever been a microphone that could record an entire band at once around one microphone, it would be this. And that's because the R88 is a bidirectional microphone. And for the layman out there, a bidirectional microphone means that both sides of in this case, a ribbon or capsule, picks up an equal picks up on both sides equally.
Yeah, dual diaphragm on both sides.
Yeah. Both sides of the microphone are active, and they both are equal. And the beauty of a ribbon microphone, because it is just one ribbon, the sound quality is identical on both sides. Where with a dual capsule condenser microphone, there's actually two capsules in the microphone pointed in opposite directions. And so usually one sounds different than the other. So in this case, I thought, wow, with a ribbon, this side sounds just like that side. Well, with a stereo ribbon, you have them stacked like this. I don't know if you can see that here. Let me see if I can put that in.
Yeah, see that? Yeah.
Like that, right? So you have them stereo. So you have a stereo field on one side, and you have a stereo field on another side. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could get a band to set up around this microphone and record them in a way that sounds like a multi-track recording. In other words, not just like a bunch of banjos and acoustic guitars. I mean, people have done that before.
Sure.
But I was thinking maybe I could actually put like electric guitars on stools and put them out to the left and right. Put them out left and right. And then put the bass in the middle, put the drums in the middle, put a singer on one side singing in the middle, and somebody else singing from the other side in the middle. And I can move everything around and turn the guitar amplifiers up and down and keep fooling with it until it starts sounding like a multi-track recording. Now, I didn't know if I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that or not. So the band was nice enough to show up the next day and do this with me, a band called San Geronimo.
Okay.
And I just sort of like haphazardly set them up in the room where I thought it would kind of work. I went into the control room, I pushed up the two faders because it's just a stereo mix.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, wow, this is actually kind of sounds kind of cool. So I go back out and I make more adjustments, turn some guitar amplifiers up and down, and I move some of the performers in and out around the mics to create a stereo recording. And I add a little bit of reverb, and I do some of the stuff that you would normally do. And I said, wow, this is really pretty cool. So we recorded it. I sent everybody home with the recording, and I went about my business. Then the band started like calling me up saying, man, this is like the best recording we've ever made.
Right off the
This
floor.
sounds better than our record. And I thought, well, maybe I should go back and listen to it some more. So I started thinking, you know what? I think I might want to try to refine this a little bit.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, over the course of the next 2 years, I did that recording 30 more times with 15 more acts.
Wow.
I found 15 more artists that were suitable for this. Mm-hmm. And I made 30 recordings, 2 songs each, essentially. And as an afterthought, when I was doing the recording, the first recording with San Geronimo, mm-hmm. I had my iPhone with me. And I thought, I'm just going to walk around the room with my iPhone camera, video, and just shoot the band while they're recording this for documentation's sake. So I know where they are around the microphone.
It'll help you.
And just for fun. Mm-hmm. So I throw that up on YouTube, and I immediately got like 15,000 views of the thing. And wow. People started talking about it. I think that particular video sort of went viral. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, people are really responding to this. They really like the idea that a band is recording from top to bottom, no overdubs.
Raw.
Right?
Yep.
No overdubs. I've taken away all the safety nets. Mm-hmm. They don't get to fix anything.
Yeah, one more time.
They have to just do it right the first time. And because there's a video documentation of it, it proves that nothing's been fixed, repaired, changed, overdubbed, blah, 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 edited like that. It's just one continuous video. So I thought, well, if I continue down this course and do this, and pursue this for the next few years, I have to shoot it in video. I mean, I'm going to have to shoot the video too. So I thought, well, what I wanted was a one-person perspective. I wanted that person, I want the viewer to be in the studio with the band, sort of walking around, listening and experiencing, quite frankly, what I've been experiencing for 40 years in recording studios.
Yeah.
Which is musicians in a room making music together. I want to invite them in. I want a one perspective look. So one camera, no edits, one band, no edits, some lighting that makes them look good.
Yep, cinematic a little bit.
And make it cinematic. And each band should probably have a different look. I had a fairly high bar to try to meet cinematically. And so I found this kid, Nathaniel Cofield, who was a very, very smart musician who knows how to shoot and light people.
Nice.
And so he's on a steady cam, he moves around. We invite people in, and that's what you get. You get the artist in their most purest, intimate, point of view possible.
Yeah.
And so I went out of my way to find people that write really good songs. It's all singer-songwriter stuff. Mm-hmm. So they're all really good songwriters. They really connect with their music. They sell their songs, so to speak. And I've done it. I did it at a bunch of studios here in town. And then I took it on the road, if you will.
Okay.
And I did some up in Portland at a studio up there called Hallowed Halls. Really big, beautiful library studio. It was a really cool environment. Mm-hmm. But then also took it to Muscle Shoals and recorded two artists there. And then I went over to Sun Studios in Memphis, since it was only a couple of 100 miles away or whatever it was. And I did some stuff at Sun Studio.
Wow.
So I ended up with 30 acts. 30 videos, mm-hmm. 15 acts, all done with one microphone. I'm really proud of it. I don't know where to go from here with that.
You've raised your bar.
I don't think I'm not inclined to want to do anymore.
No.
I think I proved my point that you can actually record a band around one microphone.
Sure.
And it sounds like a multi-track recording if a lot of time and care is taken. But the beauty is you get this vulnerable, intimate, really vulnerable and intimate performance from the artist.
I agree.
Because there, again, no safety net. Nowadays people come in, they set up their multi-mic, multi-channel, people play. If I don't play so good, I can come back on Thursday and redo my part. Is everybody really committed to making this one take great? I don't know. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
There's so many safety nets. We don't have to be our best all together at once. I strip that all away. I get rid of the producer. I get rid of the engineer. I mean, I am the engineer, but it's just, for heaven's sakes, it's just one microphone. There's not a lot of engineering going on.
No,
right?
But still, I get it.
But bands come into studios. They might be their first time.
Sure.
And an engineer walks in the room and he starts effing with everything. He starts changing their sound and mixing their sound. And he's got ideas, and we're going to do this, and we're going to add reverb and put a delay on that, and blah blah blah. And pretty soon, the band's sitting there going, "What the hell? This is not who we are."
Biting their nails.
There's all this manipulation going on by producers and engineers behind the scenes.
Yeah,
I'm guilty of it.
Yeah,
I'm one of those. Okay, so I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm just saying that's the process we have grown to assume is the way we make records.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is how we make them. Everybody comes in and everything is separated and everything can be changed and everything can be pitched and everything can be edited. And if the drummer doesn't play straight, we'll make it straight because we can edit the crap out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and this is just an assumption people are making when they walk into a recording studio. And I'm saying all that, leave it all at the door, ain't happening. Come in, stand around this microphone. I'll show you where to sit. I'll show you where to be. I'll adjust the volumes, but that's it.
The band's got to be the band.
And play, give the world your music.
That's
Just
right.
hand it to them. And there are some, now, if you look at all 30 of these,
yeah,
some are very successful. Some are like, in my opinion, some of my best work. I mean, they're outstanding. Jackie Green. Just watch the Jackie Green video and tell me that isn't just like one of the most amazing little performances. Lynx, the stuff I shot of her up in Portland, just absolutely brilliant. I mean, just beautiful. I mean, I can't even imagine it being any better than it is.
Yeah.
And it's one take. They came in, and that's what they did. They just came in and they set up and they played, and that's what it was.
That's magic right there.
It's really, really cool, and I'm really proud of that. So I'm probably as proud of that stuff as anything I've ever done.
Well, it's good to hear, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat. People are already subscribing to your YouTube channel to check that out, so that's fantastic. Yeah. Just before we go, we're a couple minutes over, but I just feel horrible if I didn't mention Paul here on the show. Paul was on the show. Paul Gilbert was on the show a while back. And I mean, he just made it so fun. I mean, you know, I hear, like, as you say, I'm kind of like the engineer or I'm the producer or whatever it is. I'm just pushing buttons to make the show go without having train wrecks. And Paul is just oozing not only talent, but passion, you know, making you want to play guitar and just smiling and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's got to be the happiest guitar player I've ever known in my life. What was it like working with Paul in the studio? You worked on his last record.
Paul is amazing. You know, I've avoided doing guitar instrumental records pretty much. I haven't really done it. I did one with George Lynch, but I haven't really. Actually, that didn't turn out. It started out as a guitar instrumental record, but anyway, Paul, I don't know, man. That guy is. I've never met anybody like him. I mean, I've never met anybody that can come in and pick up a guitar and play absolutely perfectly for 5 minutes straight. I mean, just blow like that.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're seeing in those videos and what you hear on that record, that's all live. Now, originally, he invited me to come up and do it as a one mic.
Okay.
But after the first day, I said, Paul, I know what it is you want to do, and I don't think it's going to work as a one mic, but we can record it live. We can say no overdubs, and we can say no editing. If you're in agreement with that, then let's go forward. So he said, well, fine, let's do it that way. So I threw up, you know, a dozen microphones.
Yep.
But it's all live.
Wow.
Everything you hear is 100% live. I mean, he is, you know, Joe is an incredible guitar player, no question about it. And his compositional skills is beyond belief. But Paul, his ability to pick up guitar and play it flawlessly for 6 minutes straight is, I've never heard anything like it.
Yeah,
I kept waiting. When's he going to blow a note?
Yeah.
You know, when's he going to make a mistake? When's he going to do something that I'm going to go, let's take two. So he goes in there with the band. I mean, really what determined what take we used on those songs with the guys in the studio.
Is there someone else made a mistake?
Was how everybody else was playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, did the drummer have his shit together? Did the bass player not blow that coming back in that second, you know, it's that kind of thing. I mean, It was really the band was determining what take we take. Paul just went out there and played flawlessly, take after take after take after take. I mean, I could have taken any one of his takes. I mean, he would argue, obviously.
Yeah.
Some weren't as good as others, but as somebody who wasn't that familiar with him and his technique and his style and his songwriting, I was floored.
Yeah.
I was like sitting there going, I don't know. Yeah, that's a pretty good take. I mean, can you play it better than that? If you think you can, go play it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to get in your way.
Yeah.
But and then he would go out and play something just as good. So
he's
yeah,
insane.
he's just a delightful human being.
Gentleman.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Yeah, he
just
is
delightful.
Makes you love life. I'll give you a happy little takeaway from this as well too, because I threw him off his game. This was really funny, and I wasn't prepared for this. It was just one of those things, trying to flying by the seat of my pants. And I think this was just before we went live, and so he's downstairs. He's kind of setting up his new little studio. He's got a chalkboard behind him, and he's drawing some Marshall amps on the chalkboard. So by the time the show started, he had a couple stacks drawn on the chalkboard and everything. He uses it for lessons for his students. And his kind of his academy stuff that he does. So he's got the one Marshall amp, whatever. And he's giving me a line check, give me some signal, whatever. He goes, "That sound good?" And he's drawing a little bit more. And I said, "Oh no, turn up a little bit more mids on your chalkboard back there." And he looks back at the chalkboard. He goes, "Turn up my what on the what?" And so I threw him off his game because he's got imaginary, knobs, right?
Yeah,
it was a funny moment at the time, but. Him and Joe both strike me a lot about you too. I mean, I've only known you for a little bit through Facebook, but I've been a fan of yours forever. And I think as we close the show, I just want to say this, it'll put it in perspective. Back in the day when the physical sales were what they were, there weren't a lot of bands as physical media started to go away. There weren't too many bands I would physically buy the physical copies. I'd still pay for my music, for downloads and things like that. But Joe Satriani was one. Van Halen obviously was another. And the liner notes, I would read those liner notes. And the common thread, I mean, sure that you got Joe Satriani with a great guitar player, great amp, all that good stuff. But John Cuniberti. And I think I think the world needs to know that's a secret, that is one of many secret weapons on those records. And I think we're all blessed to have your talent. And it's just been really, really amazing to speak to you tonight. I've had a great time, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you, Eric.
Awesome.
And I hope I didn't go on too long.
Oh my goodness.
Sometimes.
No, listen. I mean, I do try to keep my shows running to a certain time frame, just for the sole fact that I want to keep it.
Listen, it's been 40 years. I mean, you got to give me a break here.
But
I could go on for another 2 hours.
Listen. That means
we never got in. We never talked about Eddie Money, so you may want me back about that.
Please, let's do that for sure. The Rockets. You know what? Yeah. Let's take a moment just for a second, because here again too, we just lost Eddie. The world lost Eddie, and whether you're a diehard fan or just a closet fan or just aware of his discography, I mean, everyone loved him. Let's take a moment for a second. The Rockets. Let's talk about that career for a sec before you got into all this. We'll take a minute on that for sure.
Well, I mean, I met Eddie in 1972. He joined a band that I was actually, the band was put together by the guitar player, Dan Alexander. And so that was when I first met Ed. We were in a band. We called it the Rockets. We worked out of Berkeley, California. Mm-hmm. We stayed together for about 2.5 years. During that 2.5 years, we became, a pretty big draw in the Bay Area, in the greater Bay Area. We were selling out the clubs, and we had a thing going, and we were looking forward to signing a record contract, because a lot of the bands from the Bay Area at the time were getting record deals, and we just thought it was just a matter of time for us.
Sure.
Right? So we were just in line for that. We ended up in a recording studio. We did a bunch of recordings. And for CBS Records, essentially. And there was a guy that worked for CBS, an assistant engineer, and he took us into a studio, and we recorded a bunch of stuff. We got rejected, and that kind of created problems with the band. It's like when you work up to a certain point, and then you do a demo for a major record label and you get turned down, it really kind of upsets the apple cart. People start wondering, who's the weakest link in this band?
Who's to blame? Yeah.
Or, what is it that they don't like, or what do we need to do, and blah, blah, blah. So it became a difficult period, and we had some very strong personalities in the band, mm-hmm. including Ed. And eventually the band broke up. those recordings sat dormant for, well, I don't know how many years, until 2006.
Wow.
Where I went back and I remixed everything and actually made them available. So if you want to hear Eddie Money before he was Eddie Money and he was Eddie Mahoney in the Rockets, you can, I think it's on Spotify or Tidal. It's called The Rockets, and the album is called Re-Entry.
Okay, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to look that up.
Not to be confused with a band called The Rockets from Detroit.
Yeah, I know. That was a big band.
Went on to have a record, they had a record deal and they had records.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get us confused with those guys.
No.
This is Eddie Mahoney. Right. But, Ed was a character, always was.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to get to know, always on. He would show up to rehearsals with a couple of 6-packs of beer and a couple of friends.
Sure.
I mean, that was the kind of guy he was. We'd play a gig, a New Year's gig. He came out at midnight with a Roman candle. He thought it would be really cool to have this big Roman candle burning as he walked out on stage. Well, of course, it filled the club with smoke, right?
Yeah.
And the fire department showed up, and the club owner hated us, and we never got hired back. We did a little mini tour up the coast. We are up in Reading. First day of the tour, Eddie goes to a pool hall, meets some people, ends up smoking some pot outside on this patio.
Yeah.
And gets busted.
I was going to ask that if you got busted, yeah.
1973 in Redding, California, probably going to go to jail.
Yep.
That's just how it was.
Yep.
So they put him in jail. Our tour is canceled. The band has to go to a pawnbroker. Not a pawnbroker, but a bail bondsman.
Get some money.
Well, take all our gear.
Oh, no.
And give him all the gear out of our truck to get him the money to get him out of jail.
Oh, no.
That's the kind of guy Ed was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always something.
Yeah.
There was always something going on. A bit, self-destructive.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Bit self-destructive. Like I say, he's hard to get. I was in a band with him for 3 years. I never really got to know him.
Oh. But later you did, right?
Well, no, I never got. Once he became Eddie Money, he was off, and he didn't wear stardom really well, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But when he got sick, he started reaching out to friends.
Yeah,
and he reached out to me, and we had some long talks, and we finally connected. Unfortunately,
sadly,
it was 6 months
that
before he died.
Yeah, I saw those.
I think it was important for him to reach out and reconnect with a lot of people.
Yeah, when your time is limited, I think you realize it's time to make amends. And but I could really feel that in some of the posts you were sharing, and I was really feeling it as well too. And I'm not going to say I was a diehard fan of Eddie's. I was a fan and I appreciated it. I never got to really. I mean, I only know his big hits. I'm not going to lie and say I know everything. I don't.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, who doesn't love Eddie Money? If the song comes on the radio, you certainly don't change the station.
Yeah.
Right?
No, he had a great voice.
Yeah,
I mean,
he did.
When the first rehearsal and he came in and started singing, I went, oh,
this could be great.
Like, he's the real deal. He's not like the guitar player who also sings.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like this is a singer and a front man. And he, I knew he was going to be a star. I didn't know how.
Yep.
I was hoping it would be with our band, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, although our version of Can't Keep a Good Man Down is, I think, a lot better.
Oh, there you go. I'm going to look that up on Spotify after the show for sure. I want to check that out. And it's nice that you had your hands on, obviously taking care of that and preserving it and giving it to the world. So
well,
that's cool.
Interesting enough, it was the recording of those demos that got me thinking, playing the drums isn't so much fun.
Yeah.
I want to do what these guys are doing. Being in a recording studio and creating something from nothing and making it come out speakers.
Yep.
That's cool because drummers, they play their part and it's just shut up and sit in the back of the room. Where if you're the producer or the engineer, I mean, it's like you're like all in it.
Yeah.
You can it's all, you're controlling all this shit. So that was like what turned me on to wanting to pursue that career. So once the whole band thing ran its course inside of me, being once I got it out of my head, I wasn't going to be a rock star. I pursued live sound, and then I ultimately went into recording. So,
well, look at it this way.
So it was all good.
That's awesome. I mean, working in a world-class restaurant, being a server bringing the meals to the table with a great presentation is nice, but it's also nice to be that chef creating that nice, really nice dish. So listen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Don't go away. I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air, but I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight and having a great evening with us. As I told John off the air, my whole goal on this show every Friday is to be the warm-up band, the warm-up for your weekend. That's all I've done in my whole life, has been a warm-up for somebody, and I have no problem doing that. As long as we made your weekend kick off on a good note, then I feel we did it very well. I could not think of a better guest to bring in here, someone who's got legendary footprints in the recording industry. Please say hello to Joe when you see him next, and we are talking with his management right now as well too. But he's won't be doing anything until the new year easily. But it's been fantastic. I'll say goodbye to you out there. Everyone, have a fantastic and safe weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here very, very soon. If you enjoyed the show, show a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, and we'll keep working hard to keep you as a subscriber. And until next time, thank you so much, and cheers.
Hey, you're still here? Eric Jr. here, reminding you to check out our full lineup of quality merch. Available right now in the Broadstash Boutique. Quality products and fast shipping. Visit broadstash.com today.
Video production services for Rock Shop Live are provided by Design 39 Media. Visit design39media.com for all your website, photography, and video production needs. Microphones for Rock Shop Live are provided by Rode Microphones.